Welcome to Accounting Life with Jotham Tai, a space where we'll talk about anything and everything surrounding the people that grind through your month-end accounting close.
Hi everyone. Today's episode is Embracing Accounting Leadership. Our guest today is Carla Harris, Senior Client Advisor at Morgan Stanley. On this episode, we talk about how to understand the current leadership context, how accountants can become effective leaders, and why authenticity is an important facet of accounting leadership. Carla also gives us a preview of her new book on leadership, Lead to Win. Now, I'll hand it over to our host, Gapify CEO, Jotham Tai.
Hey, Carla, how's it going today?
Oh, it's great, Jotham. Very good. First day of September. Here we go.
First day of September, only 4 months to go left in the year. It's gone by so quick.
Yep, absolutely. This is the time to, though, revisit, restore, revise, especially if you're sitting in a leadership seat. So it's pretty exciting.
I hear those types of things every day, and I can't wait to dig in. Carla, that's very relevant for today's episodes and some of the questions that I have in store for you. But before we get started on that front, if you can just quickly, for our audience's sake, let everyone know about Lead to Win, your upcoming book, and what led you to write the book, and would love to hear more about it to start things off.
Absolutely. My favorite topic these days. So the book Lead to Win drops on September 13th, and I'm doing a big book signing in case you happen to be in the New York area, Jotham, on September 14th at the Barnes & Noble on Fifth Avenue between 12 and 2. And what prompted me to write the book is that I had the aha moment around the fourth quarter of 2018. I remember distinctly, I gave this content for the first time at a huge LinkedIn customer conference because I realized that the context that I had grown up in from a professional standpoint has shifted. When I walked out of Harvard Business School in 1987, I would argue that the backdrop of the leadership context was my way or the highway. The running joke was if your boss said jump, your answer was supposed to be how high. And now if you say jump to a millennial or a Zer, they're going to say why. And the millennials and Zers are quickly becoming the dominant population in the workforce. And they expect very different things than those of us who were boomers and older Xers. Table stakes for them is transparency, inclusivity, and feedback. And if you are a boomer or an older Xer, you didn't get a lot of feedback along your leadership journey. As you were moving through your career, you're pretty much told, keep your head down, work hard. If you don't get fired, then you know you're doing okay. So this concept of developmental feedback or just feedback in general wasn't something that was common, and yet it is required now. And so I realized that the people who were sitting in the leadership seats today actually had different skills and perspectives than those that they were actually leading. So those are the things that make me start thinking about, well, then how do you need to show up in order to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader in today's context? The second thing, Jotham, is that I realized the things that were on a CEO's report card 20 years ago, 30 years ago, profitability, growing revenue, growing market share, those were the key things. The stock price were on the report card. Rarely were people issues, people management, retaining great people, building great teams. That really wasn't on the report card. If you could do the other four things, you could probably get by as a leader. But I would submit to you that managing, attracting and managing and retaining great people, diversity, really knowing how to develop great leaders, that's now going to be on the report card. So I realized that there was a recipe, or pearls as I like to say, that would be useful to people who are currently sitting in the CEO seat, or people like you who are young entrepreneurs who have a great product but don't necessarily have the experience around building great teams. They don't have the experience of going from 4 people to 40 to 400 and building a culture and evolving a culture, if you will. So there were tools that they needed as well. So put that together with a lot of CEO conversations over the 2.5 years of the pandemic, with people calling me directly asking for advice. How do I speak in this moment? What do I say about the social unrest? How do we respond to the murder of George Floyd? For me as a leader, for my organization, we never talk about these things. I realized that the most efficient way to get the information out was to put it in a book. So Lead to Win was born.
Absolutely. And there were a lot of great points there. And as I think about what you just described there, I think of three things specifically. One is, I'm going to age myself, Carla, but I go back to the days where leadership was about how clear you were with instructions and directives. It was very military in a way. But in this environment, to your point, it's very different. People respond in different ways, and which is why your book is so important. There's no textbook methodology anymore in leadership. The times are changing, and we leaders have to adapt. You also touched on the board just key performance metrics of a company. We just had our board meeting a couple of weeks ago, and these types of metrics now get interest from corporate governance and board directors, as it should. And Carla, you touched on it, because there is also a quantitative impact to not retaining employees or not having, obviously, highly engaged employees in your organization. So, we at Gapify, and I'm not just saying this, Carla, because you're doing this episode, but this is something firmly in mind. I know part of what influenced us to adopt these types of practices was our time at the lab at Morgan Stanley's Multicultural Innovation Lab back 3 years ago. But I feel like we're positioned well to grow our company because we have those principles in mind, and books like yours will help us execute these types of philosophies on the ground. So I really can't wait to dig in a little bit further with you, and specifically because this podcast is catered for the accounting profession and the industry. There's also another dimension to leadership
Yes.
and profession types. So I'm just gonna, go straight to I'm sure a very common theme in the accounting profession, which is when you think about us accountants, and I think these generalizations have some, definitely some credibility around it, but you think about accountants being analytical, very methodical, which to me sounds like a different part of the brain than inspirational and leadership. So, I would love a pearl or two about how accountants can develop these two intuitions and skills and be effective leaders.
Absolutely. And I would say that the common point, whether you're an accountant or an investment banker or a marketing executive, let's say the common point is around being successful. And the report card, again, for an accountant was, as you said, being very analytical, very quantitative, very detail oriented, making sure that the numbers are in fact right. So the IQ, the expertise around that was the thing that was most valued. But look at what has gone on in some of the large accounting, now I can say accounting/consulting firms, whether it's PwC or EY or Deloitte. The turnover was already getting pretty high in those organizations. And now it really has accelerated because of what has gone on with the COVID-19 and the shelter in place. And so you now have to think of yourself being successful as an accountant in being able to be that person that all of the young talent or the middle level talent wants to work for, so that you have an opportunity to get the great teams, the high productivity teams. So if you're not the person that's showing up as somebody who cares about their people, values their contribution, gives them room to contribute, gives them good feedback, you won't be the person that can attract the best teams. And if you don't have the best teams, you won't be able to serve the best clients as well as you might like to. And therefore, it's going to compromise your success as an individual. So rethinking about your report card as an accountant away from just the detailed orientation and the exactness of the product, but being able to show up with great teams. That's number one. The second point that I'm going to leave you with is the companies increasingly will be looking for diverse teams, because they are now making the requirement of the legal firms that they do business with, the accounting firms that they do business with, the investment banks, the consulting firms. They are making requirements that you show up with a diverse team. So if you're not showing up with a diverse team, which you cannot do if you're not that kind of leader, then that's going to put you at a disadvantage to winning business. So I'll leave my argument right there, Joseph.
Those are two very important points. And the first one specifically, the report card concept and leadership being a part of your duty and responsibility as a leader, regardless of what profession you are, is an important point. So I think, accountants now, and I see it and hear it more and more, Carla, that, part of the evaluation of success has to include leadership. It's not just, can you produce financial statements accurately or completely? It's, hey, we need to retain talent. We need to find talent. And Carla, I can go on and on about this, but one of the things that keeps me up at night generally, and a lot of fellow CEO and founders feel this way in this competitive market, it's, having to fill 100 roles and, and the level of effort required to do it. And then, thinking about potential retention and attrition, it's such a big thing. And it's I think a lot of times, not as quantifiable as other areas of business, but it doesn't mean it's less important. So the report card concept and accountants understanding, and accounting managers and controllers understanding that that's part of what the role consists of, I think is very important there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jotham, I have a chapter in the book that is specifically targeting entrepreneur CEOs, because I realized with all the work that I've done with the lab, frankly, as I said, and I've met many great CEOs, and you're one of them. But the issue is, again, the company, you created it, you know what it is you're trying to do, you have a good go-to-market strategy, but there's nowhere in your background where you should even have the experience around how to attract a great team and how to retain a great team. You haven't done that. In most cases, the entrepreneurs that I've come in contact with in the lab, they're 27, 28, 34, 32. And if you don't have that experience, you could make a lot of expensive footfalls as you're trying to grow your company. Because in the early days, when you're trying to grow that senior leadership team, your chief salesperson, your CMO, your CTO, these are in many cases $200,000 to $300,000 hires, or 100 and change, a nice big chunk of equity, which means you're married to that person even if they don't work out. And if you make a bad hire at that stage, it could be catastrophic for your company. Why? A $200,000 or $300,000 hire is, in many cases, it could be 10 months of, or a year of runway for you, depending on what your burn rate is. It could also be very dilutive to the emerging culture that you're building, because now this person is toxic. They make it a tough work environment. And now the people, even if you get that person out, the people that you're left with are looking at you like you're crazy. Like, why did you bring this person in? What were you thinking? So now they're looking at you differently, which that repair can be difficult. So that's what I mean. It can be catastrophic. Yeah. It can take your company down. So in that chapter, I say, if you are an early stage entrepreneur, here's the deal. If you don't have experience with interviewing people, get yourself a kitchen cabinet of people that do have experience. So for you, Jotham, in the lab, we played that role. We said, let us help you put together the job description. Talk to us about what you need. Let us put that together. Oh, by the way, let us interview, or if you find 5 candidates, let them interview with us. And then we're going to come back and tell you which 2 we think, based on what you want and based on what we know about you, might be the right complement for you. Because it's also very tempting in the early stages of your company's life to try to hire yourself again. You say, exactly. I want somebody just like me, somebody who's passionate, has that grit, will be willing to work 24 hours. I want somebody that's like me, right? Yeah. And that's what you think, but that's not what you need. You don't need somebody who's exactly like you. You need somebody who's going to fill in those early gaps, which also means, as an early stage entrepreneur, that you need to be able to identify the gaps. And sometimes you're so close to it, you can't even see that. So my advice is, get yourself a kitchen cabinet, let them help you if they have experience in interviewing people, and then you can make the final decision. Then I say, if you don't have a kitchen cabinet, here are the 15 questions that you now want to ask when you're interviewing. Because again, if you don't know how to interview, you don't even know what questions to ask. And I give explicit questions, and I say, here's why you're asking that question. Here's what you are looking for in that question. And if that person answers this way, no, next.
Right. Well, Carla, those are the kitchen cabinet is an important concept, because obviously there's a set of criteria that we need to evaluate as leaders before making key hires, and to have resources around you to support that is going to help ensure that you find the right person and the right fit. But beyond that too, when we can lean on other resources and have all these tools to evaluate properly, we and myself, specifically as a senior leader of my company, can focus on actually pitching and sharing vision. So there's the aspect of having coverage and making sure that we're asking the right questions. But to me, I know these rock star candidates are probably getting 5 or 6 different offers, including ours as a younger startup. So I need to make sure I express my vision and our culture and our leadership, which touches on one of your pearls. And to me, this is one that's nearest and dearest to my heart, which is authenticity. I think we've been successful at Gapify at attracting good talent, because when they go through the process and interview process with us, we come off as genuine and authentic. So I want to hear from your own words. I know that's one of your pearls. Like, how would you describe it, being authentic to accountants, and why that's important?
Yeah, absolutely. Your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage. And as you know, I talk about authenticity all the time, but it's most important if you are sitting, frankly, in that leadership seat, because then you motivate and inspire those who are working with you to bring their authentic selves into that organization. And anytime anybody is in an organization where they can be who they really are, they'll always outperform. And that now accrues to your status in that leadership seat. That is why it is so critical, because if people don't think you are being authentic, then they're never going to bring their authentic self, because frankly, they think there could be a penalty. And if people are holding back that creative part of who they are, that problem solver, that person who can really create something out of a blank sheet of paper. If they're holding all of that back because authentically that's who they are, then you're not getting the very best of that talent. You're getting the perfunctory part of that talent, which will not allow you to compete as a team or an organization over time, because innovation is the dominant competitive parameter. But if people don't think it is appreciated, let alone allowed, then you're not going to get it.
Well, and it's so hard, though, I know sometimes for accountants, Carla, because we go into our profession just being so formal and being guarded about, because it's part of our image as an objective party, right? Like, not to let too much of ourselves and just be very, methodical, as I mentioned before. But how do you break an account to be more authentic? Is it just coaching accounting leaders that, hey, this is important for you to be authentic? Or is there I don't know, a magic potion that we can drink and be authentic?
Well, here's the deal. Here's what I say to anyone, because folks say, well, it's very difficult to bring my authentic self into any environment. Here's how you do it. Number one, know who you are. And I don't say that lightly, Jotham, because before the pandemic, we were all running around so much that many of us failed to step back and say, who am I really relative to who I was in 2019, relative to who I was in 2012? Or if you're an accountant, who am I really at the core versus who do I think I need to be? Because there's this image of what an accountant is in order to be successful. So who am I really away from that image? So the first is to know who you are. The second is to understand that we're all multifaceted. And that means there is a results-oriented you, an intellectual you, a frivolous you, an argumentative you. Know that we're all multifaceted and embrace that. And then the third key to bringing all of you into any environment is now you can relax. Now you can relax and meet people exactly where they are. And the reason why this is important for an accountant, again, in the early days, you are being evaluated on the specificity and the accuracy of your work. But as you get more senior as an accountant and you're on your way to partnership, or you're on your way to managing director, or you're on your way, to a treasurer's or a CFO role, if you're an accountant within a corporate context, now your success is going to be tied to your ability to engage with clients. Your success is going to be tied to your ability to bring in business. And the easiest way to bring in business is to bring your authentic self into that environment, into that ask, because then people trust you. And trust is at the heart of any successful relationship. And the more objective the work is, the more the relationship is going to matter in getting the business. So you can argue, 2 + 2 is 4, right? PwC can do it. Any accounting firm can add and subtract. and be forensic. There's a formula around that. But what makes me choose Jotham over Paris is going to be my belief in your ability to bring all of your firm to bear on whatever my need or issue might be. And that's going to be a function of whether or not I trust you. Do I think you have my best interest at heart? All the things that are core to a relationship, or if I don't have a relationship with you, will be core to my understanding of who you are. And the more authentic I think you are, the easier it is going to be for me to buy it that you can do that.
I hear that authenticity is a competitive advantage from what you just said there, and it's also a differentiator. I always get that wrong when I say it for the first time. And it would be a crime, Carla, if I didn't use this time to thank you and the lab for my kind of big aha moment with authenticity. So you probably won't remember this because it was several years ago now. Gosh, it's been that long since we were at the lab. But there was a session organized by the lab for us founders to meet with James Gorman,
Yes.
CEO of Morgan Stanley. And we all got to ask James questions. And mine was, well, James, I feel like there's a lot of pressure for me to be perceived a certain way or to say different things in the right way. How do I manage and control that? So his response to me was simply, be yourself, Jotham. And hearing that from him and, from folks like you, very accomplished professionals in the finance space and in the industry, just goes a long way, Carla. So, your words in your book just really impact people like myself, growing leaders and, people, to your point earlier, we don't have a playbook on leadership. I've been in the accounting profession for a long time, but there's no reference point. So all these, really helpful items along the way, whether, it's these pep talks or your book, I think is so critical in unlocking all the leaders in us.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. I tell people all the time, use the pearls, they work.
I love those pearls, Carla, and I will be definitely showing up to the book signing session. But if you can share with our audience when your book is going to be available and where they can find it if they're not around New York.
Absolutely. Well, it's available right now on pre-order on Amazon, on barnesandnoble.com, and it will drop on September 13th. And it will be available wherever books are physically sold or digitally sold, because we also have an e-version. I recorded it myself. So if you are a person that likes to hear audio, then you will hear my voice just like we're talking right now on this podcast. And then if you happen to be in New York on September 14th, I'm doing the physical book signing at the Barnes & Noble on 46th Street and 5th Avenue from 12 to 2. So if you're on your lunch hour, you can come over and get a book signed and get a picture.
That sounds like something I will do because I'm more of a hard copy type person, Carla. So I look forward to seeing you there. And thanks again for joining us on the podcast today. This was definitely very helpful for me as a leader. And I know for a lot of accountants who are trying to unlock this next stage of their growth, this is going to be very valuable for them as well. So thank you so much for your time today, Carla.
Thanks for having me. And go get them, Jotham.
Thanks for stopping by. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want more information, please check us out at gapify.com, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.